Welcome to Loving Me Before I Love You with Tammy Nicole, the podcast dedicated to you loving and putting yourself first. Others have come first in your life for years, and you know it's time for that to change. You're about to be empowered to set healthy boundaries, confidently have hard conversations, unapologetically put yourself first, and live the peaceful life you deserve. Remember, self-love is essential, and loving yourself sets the stage for every other love in your life. So get ready to embrace self-love like never before with your host, Coach Tammy Nicole.
Hey. Welcome to Transformation Tuesdays over at Loving Me Before I Love You. Today is no different. As we do all episodes, we are going to discuss a topic that I feel a lot of us can relate to. You either relate to it because you're experiencing it, or you relate to it because you know someone that has experienced it or going through it. When we talk about chronic illness and mental health, so many of us are not what I consider 100% well, right? Some of us have chronic illnesses that we just came out of nowhere, to be honest. When I think about my own story, it came out of nowhere. Didn't know why, didn't know how. I just know I was experiencing something that needed to be addressed. And that illness took a toll on my mental health, especially because I was young. Well, I want to discuss this on a more larger scale and talk about how mental health and your health are totally aligned. I do have a friend here. I call her my TikTok friend. And we have so many things in common. Her name is Charisma, and I'm so excited that she is joining us. She is a lupus thriver. A lot of us like to call us lupus survivors, but we're lupus thrivers because we're thriving every day. And I just want to say welcome to the show, Charisma.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. So, being a lupus thriver, myself, I won't say it's difficult to find people who are walking the same path because it's becoming I would say a more talked about subject lately.
For sure.
Than when I got diagnosed when I was 17.
For sure.
When I was 17, it was like, what's that? Ooh, what's going on? Now, we have made it a subject of conversation. I don't know. I used to ask myself, why is it becoming so well known? And is it because a certain population is actually having the diagnosis a little bit more? And it's like, hey, no, we need to talk about this because it's not just them that's getting it. It's other people, that's experiencing it, and everybody needs to talk about it. But I always look to connect with people who go through it. Social media has made that a lot easier.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit about your story and your journey as you have basically conquered and thrive through lupus and mental health.
Yes. So I was diagnosed when I was 22, I believe. I had graduated from college. Yeah, I had my bachelor's and I was in my master's program. So I was 22. And I just started experiencing like throbness in my fingers. Like that was my first symptom. It was like throbness and my fingers would swell. And in my family, we were heavy Motrin takers, like heavy. For instance, like when I was in high school, and I had bad cycles all my life too. So I took Anaprops, and then my dad went to his doctor, and I don't know why we did this, but he went to his doctor and told his doctor that I was having bad menstrual cycles, and his doctor prescribed 1,000 milligram Motrins. And I took those faithfully on the clock, counting out the days, everything. So I was used to taking Motrin ever since I've been about 16, 17 years old. And so when my hands start throbbing, I just did what I did with my cycle. I would just pop a Motrin. And so that's what I did. And so I went home for Christmas break, and I was just tired. We had midterms, not midterms, it was finals, um, right before Christmas break, and went home, got to my parents' house, threw my stuff on the floor, and like immediately went to bed. Like went to sleep. Would not get up. They kept, wanting to do things, wanting to hear about the semester and things like that. I was just dead set tired. And my hands were swollen, and they were wondering about why my hands were swollen. And so I slept for about 2 days, I guess. And then on that third day, in the middle of the night, I got up to go use the bathroom, and I could not move. My legs didn't work. My arms didn't work. And in my parents' house, my room is right next to my brother's room. So I'm screaming for help, but he's the only one that can hear me. And so he comes in, and of course he's agitated. Why are you screaming? I was like, I cannot get out the bed. So he literally pulls me out the bed, and he starts screaming for my parents. She can't move. Something's wrong. And so everybody rushed in my room, and they were like, what's the matter? I was like, I cannot move. So my mom ended up walking me to the bathroom. I used the bathroom. I got back in bed, and I just laid there. And so the next morning, my dad took me to his doctor again. And while I was in the way, and I had to be wheeled in because I could not walk. It was just like all my mobility out of my legs were gone. And also like during that break, they just kept, I couldn't eat either. So they just kept giving me Ensure milk and ice cream. I ate that for like a day and a half until they took me to the doctor. Like for every meal, it was Ensure milk and ice cream. So I get to the doctor, and we're sitting in the waiting room, and the pharmaceutical reps, their commercials and the drugs that they're pushing. So the commercial came on the screen. It said, "Do you feel tired? Are you weak? Do your bones hurt? Are your joints inflamed? Well, if that's the case, you have lupus." And I just immediately thought I got lupus. And I tapped my mom. I was like, "Mama, that's what I have." And she was like, "No, you don't. You don't know that. You don't know that." And so I went back and saw him, and he was like, "Yeah, I think, you might be right." So they did the what's it called? The A1 AI test
ANA.
or something. A
The
and A.
ANA.
They did the A. He did the ANA test. He said it'll take a couple of days to come back, but in the meantime, I'm gonna send you to this to a rheumatologist. And so I went to the rheumatologist. He ran the ANA, but he worked like with the lab specifically. And so the test came back while we were waiting at the rheumatologist's office. And he was like, "Yeah, you have lupus." He was like, "I'm put you on prednisone." At that time, I think it was Imiran, and that was it. Those were the two. And Plaquenil. Those three. He was like, "You're gonna have to take this for the rest of your life, but we caught it pretty early, so you should be good." And so that didn't register. All I was thinking was, I got to get back to school to finish my master's, because the next semester was my comprehensive exams, and that's when you elevate and you're going to graduate and start your life as a professional. So that's all I kept thinking was, if this is going to work, I'm going to take it. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get my master's. I'm going to get the job I want. That's all. I was speed ahead. And it did not register to me then that I had to take these drugs for the rest of my life. But I took it. Within a couple of hours, I felt great. So great. I went out with my friends that night, and I'm from Atlanta. And I was in school in Tallahassee. So I knew how Atlanta worked. And I wanted to get better, but I also wanted to hit the streets because it was Christmas break, and me and my friends had made plans. I'm a 22-year-old in Atlanta in the early 2000s. So that's all I kept thinking. And I felt great. I felt fine. I took the drugs. I was fine the rest of Christmas break. My mom drove back to Tallahassee with me afterwards. because I was adamant that I was going back, and I was going back on time because I had to do my thesis work. I had to, meet with, your thesis chair and make sure your data was correct because I'm in public health. So she was like, well, I'm going to go back with you and, stay like a week. And then your dad will come pick me up. And I was like, fine, okay. It don't matter to me. And as long as I can go back. And so she watched me like the whole week. And when he came and got her, she was like, yep, she's good. Like, she takes her medicine, she gets up, she do what she had to do. It's no problem. So that started my journey there.
Mhm.
And that was in 2001, January 2001.
Did you ever like come to terms with the fact that you had this condition that was basically life changing?
Not immediately, no. So I came to terms with it once I got my first flare. And I didn't get my first flare for a couple of years. So I graduated, I moved to DC, I was working in DC. And then I set up my doctors. My doctors in Atlanta recommended me to doctors in DC. So I set up my doctors there. Wasn't really having any problems, but I had this flare in the middle of the night. And I didn't know what to do because I had heard about them, but I did not, I had not experienced them. So I didn't know. And I called my friend who was up there with me, and she called my dad, and he told her to take me to George Washington Hospital immediately. Called the doctor, went to the hospital, and he's like, "Yeah, you're having a flare. We're gonna have to keep you a couple of days just to make sure it goes back to normal." And that's when it set in. I was like, "Oh, okay, I have lupus." Okay, but still I guess it's my upbringing. Don't we don't lie in a situation. Nobody does in my family. So it was just second nature to me to, okay, I have this flare. I have to stay in the hospital. When I get out, I have to, go to my doctor, make sure the medicines are correct, go to work, because this was my first official, public health professional job. And I didn't want to, miss any days, or anything and not tell anybody. I never told anybody anything about my lupus in the workplace. No one, not a soul. So I was just operating off of, okay, I have lupus. I have to be careful. I got to take medicine, but I also have things to do. And so I can't let lupus slow me down, but I have to be cognizant that maybe I need to rest more than go out, or I need to change my food than, operate with my friends and just eat junk food all the time. So those were like the little conversations I had in my head, but I never echoed them to the public or outside.
Now, did you not talk about it because it was something you just didn't do, or was it something that you didn't know how to have the conversations?
It was something I didn't do, but I also didn't want my friends to look at me any differently.
Mm.
So the couple of friends that did know, I knew that they wouldn't take
Judge you?
sympathy, or judge me, take sympathy on me. But even with them, I would take my medicines very secretively. Like I would have, like I had a designer little
Pill bottle?
No, it wasn't a pill box. It was like, it looked like a wallet, but it had a pill box inside. And so anytime I would bring it out, it would just look like a Coach wallet. And so nobody knew the difference. And I would take that on all my trips, everything I did. But the couple of people that knew, I knew they wouldn't like look at me any differently. Now I didn't tell, the masses. Of course, my parents knew, my aunts knew, my direct family knew, but like my friends, only my closest of close friends knew from the very beginning. And I just didn't want to tell anybody. And it's also, I'm a Sagittarius. We tend to hold things in. We like to observe and watch before we jump into anything. So that was another thing. Like my family wasn't very, public with their feelings. So that, relate to me. I was a Sagittarius. I wasn't very public with my feelings. And I wanted to keep living my life the way I wanted to live my life. And so I just didn't tell anybody. And that's how I operated for years. I mean, up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
What made that change happen?
TikTok, pretty much. One of my insomnia nights, I was like, well, what is this TikTok app? And I got on there, and the first people I saw was, I don't know if you know them, but it was Candace, my lady. It was Steve, the kidney doctor. It was, what was the other one? I think her name is Erin. She was going through it at this time. But between those three, I was like, oh, wow. They are literally laying it all out. And I was astonished. And so I watched them for maybe 6 months before I even said anything.
Yeah, I have mentioned it. I'm not necessarily like, I'll talk about it amongst anybody that knows me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have an issue with, verbalizing the words, that it's something that I deal with. But I've never really been like the full advocate, and literally like last year I was like, oh, I'm gonna start doing more,
Mm-hmm.
things that are advocating for research and just different things, like doing the lupus walk. I've never done it.
Okay.
I'll donate. I'll give money to it. But I've never done the actual walk.
Mm-hmm.
So when Lupus walks in me emails all the time when it's time for it, I'm like, oh, okay, here, here's some money. You know what I
Oh.
mean? But I never go. I never, ever. I have friends that have gone. I've,
Mm-hmm.
seen people. And I say I have friends that are gone, more associates than friends, but people that I know
Yeah.
that have gone, and they go practically every year. And people will say, why you don't do it? I don't do the breast cancer walk. My mom passed away from breast cancer. I'll,
Mm-hmm.
I'll give to it. I'll support. I'm really big on supporting things that affect me, but I just have never.
I will say, like, the breast cancer walk is a lot, because it's a lot of people. The amount, and their colors and their ribbons are known across the world, right? And so it is a lot. I've done the walk for people I know that had breast cancer, so I'm familiar with it. But have it been me, I don't know if I could do that, because it's a lot. I mean, and people dress up for it. They have on tutus, they have on
Yeah.
different shirts, and it seems like fun, but internally, I would be like, it would dampen my spirit for sure. Now the lupus walk is a little different, because I don't know, and this may sound a little selfish or self-righteous, but when I go to the lupus walk, you have two sets of populations. You have people that have lupus and they look like they got something going on, and then you have people like me and you. And I feel I feel totally fine with people that look like me and you. Like I don't want to see it on your face or in your body. You know what I'm saying? So for the people that have lupus, and I know they're totally different versions.
Yeah.
I started off with SLE that transferred into nephritis, and I've had a transplant since then. So I get it. There are different versions. And like my doctor said, I was diagnosed very early, and I did not have all the ups and downs that other other lupus warriors, talk about back
Yeah.
surgeries, knee surgeries, things like that. But it's just something about like you don't need to look like what you're going through, and that's
Hmm.
usually my motto that I stick with. And so it makes it easy for me to do the walk, because there are far more people like me and you at the walk than the other version.
Hmm.
And the walk is it's small. It's like
It's a
one
short
time.
distance.
Yeah, it's one time around Piedmont.
Yeah, because most of us can't make it too
Right,
far.
right.
Our joints, our everything is about ready. Oh, that's enough.
Yeah,
We would have bailed out on them if they was going any
right,
further.
right. So that's why I say it's different. And you can wear the shirt. You don't have to wear the shirt. You can make, fun. Now, I've never done the walk and had like the signs and stuff, like the balloons and the signs and support me. I have lupus. Like I don't do that. Like
Yeah,
I'll
and
wear the
it be
t-shirt.
that part too.
Yeah,
See,
it'd be that part. Yeah, I don't do that. So, but I did decide I was going to do it this year because I had a friend last year. She had a stroke and she had lupus.
I've
And so
had
I
that
said,
myself.
okay. So I said that I would do, the walk. I was telling them, our group of friends, I was like, we'll do the walk for her. And they was like, wait a minute.
You
We need to
too.
do the walk for you. Like I was like, oh, okay. I'll set it up. But and so I'll get shirts that fit me. Like it won't say, I have lupus or nothing like that. It might say simply charisma, warrior and training or something like that. But yeah, I
And
live it how
what that
I
sound like is the lack of wanting to claim it as your own.
hmm
And I agree with that, because that's why I don't say lupus survivor, and things that ain't like I'm a thriver.
hmm
I'm thriving, and when it show up, it show up. We'll address it when we address it, but I don't really like to claim it.
Right,
I don't like to say I have lupus, because I don't have it. It
right,
just exists somewhere.
right.
It affects me sometimes, because I believe words are super powerful. So I feel you
Exactly. Exactly.
from
Yeah.
that perspective. And that to me is that's where that mental health component kind of comes into play. Because if I constantly tell myself mentally that this is what I have, this is what I'm going through, then it's always everything. It's lupus this, lupus that. I'll know
hmm
when I was having flares, I would hate going to the hospital and even telling them that I was in a flare. I would go in there and not tell, I don't know what's wrong with me.
hmm
Like, figure it out. Because I always felt like they would use it as the excuse every time.
mm
And to me, the symptomologies of it can be for a lot of different things. Like,
hmm
the fact that I'm super fatigued and the fact that my, blood pressure can be high today don't mean
Right.
that I'm just automatically in a flare. You know what I mean? Like, they would take all of them symptoms, and simply because my chart says
hmm
this is what this person has, it was like it'd be automatic. This is what we're looking for. This is what we're treating. And I'm like, yo, it could be something. It could be something else. Like,
Yeah. No, I got to the point where I knew a flare was coming, so I would deal with it on my own. So the last flare I had that sent me to the hospital was in it 2010. Yeah, 2010. And I know what it feels like. Neck gets stiff, fingers start getting tight, elbow gets tight.
retinoids.
That
Mm,
means lay down,
and
give me a
relax.
heating pad, and I'll alternate between heating and ice, turn off the lights, and leave me alone.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't operate in, well, I haven't operated in voicing that I've been a flare.
Yeah.
Um, but a part of this journey, the only part where I think my mental health was at stake seriously was during dialysis, because that's something you can't avoid. Like either it's in your stomach or it's in your arm. And for me, I had it both. So when I did it at home, it was nauseating because I had to look at the materials every single day. It was in my bedroom. I mean, like it took over my bedroom. And so when it stopped working, I was like, great, get all this stuff out my house. I'd rather go to the center any day than, have to look at materials. Now, it is of ease because it's in the house and you can do it whenever you want to. But mentally, looking at the bags, looking at the machine, looking at the tube coming out your stomach to the bathroom, it was just too much
It was a
for
lot.
me. And I think my body rejected it because whenever I had to do it at night, it was always a big to do. It was always a situation. It was always, I gotta take my shower. I gotta make sure I clean the site. I gotta wash my hands. I gotta close the door. I gotta sanitize my hands. I gotta get on the bed. I gotta do it was always a lot. And I was totally frustrated by it. But to the outside world, I was still getting up, working out every morning, going to work, not going to work, but, logging in. And so it looked like I was, to my parents, like I was handling it well, but at nighttime, it was beyond. I was just so over it. So when it failed, I was just like, and they asked me, well, do you want to go back? I said no so loud that the nurse was like, okay.
Yeah, I got it, right?
We
We're not going to ask you that no more.
We don't want that more. And so I said, what you should do, what you going to do is you going to send me to one of these centers in these white neighborhoods. And I'm going to go there. And I'm not going back to a black center. Because that's also nauseating to look at that, like the amputees and all of that stuff. So they sent me, I went to one of the bougiest dialysis centers there couldn't be. We had coffee and donuts every morning. I mean, people were coming in with fur coats and, I was totally fine in there. So,
atmosphere.
Yeah. But it was, I still have, had it in my arm. So, I became a pro at hiding it a lot. But, towards the end of it, I just didn't care. I really didn't. I was ready for my transplant. I knew I was on the transplant list. I knew my brother had already submitted to be a donor and we were waiting on his test results. So I didn't care. I would go to the gym, have a big old Band-Aid on my arm, like my arm would be swollen, or when I had it in my chest, I didn't care. I was just, I was tired and I was ready for the transplant. Really, because I had submitted at 3 different hospitals. I was like, one of these 3 is going to work. So, yeah, that's the only time when my mental health was at stake is during dialysis. And especially when I had it in my stomach. And when I started, I went to the black centers and I was like, never again, not ever will I go to one in the black neighborhood. No.
Hey, hope you're feeling the love in today's episode. We'll pick back up where we left off in a moment. First, we're excited to share that Tammy has a collection of self-love t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and journals for you to express how much you love yourself to the world. From comfy hoodies to motivational mugs, there's something for everyone. While you're listening to today's show, feel free to browse the full collection at IamTammyNicole.com. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get back into today's show.
How did your for yourself, right? Like when you're going through something like dialysis, and as you're mentioning the outward appearance of bandages and, inserts from having sites of having to have probably catheters and things of that nature, like just kind of like present, so that they can always hook you up. Did it affect your self-love did it affect your self-worth? Like, how did you feel about you during that process?
Yeah, so I felt like I was a warrior for sure. By this time, more friends had known that I was going through something. So I felt like a warrior, and I was surprised by their reaction. It was like no sympathy. It was no judgment. It was no, whoa, sorry. It was none of that. It was just like, look, you got this. We here. Whatever you need, we got you. Um, and so that made me feel good. It was I my self-worth was fine because I was working out. So I still was moving my body, getting my endorphins ready. I also am an esthetician, so I was like taking care of my skin meticulously. And I knew my skin was suffering because of the dialysis, but I just didn't I didn't let that grab my whole attention. So, I would make myself up. I would do facials. I would, at this time I still had my salon. So I was okay with that. It was when it was time for like trips, and I had to not only pack your clothes, but I'm on dialysis, so I have to set up time in a center wherever we are. Or when I had the catheter, like trying to buy a bathing suit with a catheter in your chest. And I could remember going to like a resort with my family. And this is near the time where like I just didn't care anymore. And I had on the bathing suit, and that catheter, it sat like right here. But the first one sat like a little over here, so it was more hidden. But the second one sat like dead set in the middle. And I was in the pool, and my dad was he was on me. He was like, don't, yelling at me, don't get it wet. Get out the water. Like just being a dad. And I sat in the pool, and I could look around, and I could see people looking at the catheter. And I lost it. I got out the water. I went to my room. I cried for hours. Like it was a family reunion, so I didn't even participate really with the family reunion unless I had to. Like the dinner was that night. I didn't go to the dinner. I needed my time to recover. But then, as I always do, I kind of suck it up. I talk to God, ask him for patience and faithfulness and love. And, that's how I would, break out of my like, woe is me type of cycles. I would just have to talk to God. And I was also journaled. So I have like entries where the water is completely soaked. Or, I would call my therapist, and because she was on, she told me I could call her whenever I wanted to. Don't worry about the cost. So when I was having those moments, I would, text her, let her know what's going on. She would like help me calm down, breathing exercise and stuff like that. So I found a lot of different tools throughout the journey. But I must say, God was always first. Church was always there. My family was always there. But finding a therapist that understood me was so paramount. One of my friends who is heavy into therapy, when I did tell her, she was like, "You got a therapist?" And I said, "No." She was like, "You're going through trauma, right? Like, you need a therapist." I was like, and again, I come from a family, we don't do therapy. So I was like, she was like, "No, for real." Like, she was like, "Listen to me, sis. You need a therapist. I'm gonna send you my therapist number, and I'm gonna tell her that you're gonna call her." So she put the onus back on me because she gave me the number. Then she said, "I'm gonna tell my therapist that you gonna call her, and
Yeah.
so you gonna call her." And so that's what I did. So the therapy helped a lot. And then just though, when you look around a dialysis center and you see people that, even though I was in a good one, you still saw people that were bad off, whether it was their skin looking strange, whether they couldn't walk, whether they had to be tended to a lot because their blood pressure would drop all the time or they would faint or something like that. And I always took power over that. I didn't look like that. I had my moments where my, blood pressure would drop. But I never was not able to walk. I was never, unable to find a vein. I didn't bleed out. And so I always felt like I was going to be okay. It was just the me moments of not believing and not trusting and not having faith that, this is only for a time, that would get me every single time. And I just had to, back it on up and, read my Bible, talk to my therapist, and get back centered and do what I need to do. And working out helped a lot because as long as knew I could lift weights and I didn't have to revert back to like a smaller weight, or because I do it in a small group class. If I could be in the class, I'm good. The minute I can't compete in a class, then we got a problem. And I never had a problem. So yeah, it kept me centered. I had things to keep me centered. Mm-hmm. And on top of all of that, I was still working. I was in graduate school getting my doctorate. I was writing my dissertation. So I had things I had to do. So this dialysis thing was getting on my nerves because it was like occupying time that I could be doing something else. And I had to let my salon go, obviously, because I couldn't be in a place waiting on clients all day and, tending to clients and having dialysis and being in graduate school and writing the dissertation and work out. One of those had to go. And so the salon had to go. So yeah, it was definitely a determination there. And it's also my own willingness and only belief that this was only for a time. And when this time is over, I had faith that God would deliver me. And he did. And I couldn't be more grateful for it.
That is amazing. I love that you talked about the therapy portion because a lot of people, when you are in a circumstance, because it doesn't have to necessarily be lupus, it can be anything. It can be any chronic illness. And you are battling the mental because you're dealing with it for life. Yeah. You're having to face this battle no matter which way you turn. It may show up in the blink of an eye. And you're dealing with it. And it's quote unquote a part of your lifestyle. And so the mental health portion of it, having a therapist is like so essential. Being able to have a support system is even more so essential. I think for myself, when I think about the journey, the hardest part was you look like nothing is wrong. So don't nobody understand that something is wrong.
Right.
Nothing's wrong until they say, oh no, we're admitting you. And then they're like, what they admitting you for? And you be like, you don't understand that I told you what I deal with. So you don't believe it until there's a problem.
Right.
And I didn't know that lupus could cause strokes until I had one. And it was
I didn't know that until one of my friends had one. Did not know that.
And they were like, oh yeah, this is lupus induced. And I'm like, wait, what? This is what I mean when I say the minute you tell somebody that this condition exists, everything is its fault, no matter what. And I'm like, this is a full-fledged stroke and you talking about lupus caused it. You know what I mean? Like, where they do
Why
that
not
at?
get stressed?
Where they do that at? But then eventually it's always you're having a flare because you're stressed. You're you know what I mean? Like, it's everything is all, which is why I stopped even saying, I just say, figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
These are my symptoms. Figure it out. Yeah. I used to literally not go to the same hospital.
Just because.
Girl.
Yeah.
because I don't need you pulling up my history to tell me.
Yeah.
But Atlanta don't have that many, so you stuck.
Right. You got two.
Two good ones.
Two, maybe three.
But yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like you definitely have to have a support system, but having people that understand it, having people that trust your words, you know what I mean? Because it doesn't always look
Right.
the way it sounds.
Yeah. And bringing it to today, it's like, back to what you said initially, why is it talked about so much now? Like I can't tell you the number of people that have told me, the doctors have told them that they're having lupus like symptoms. It's like, what is lupus like and why I didn't get lupus like? Because, essentially they might be on one medicine, but what is lupus like?
Yeah.
And I want to know why I didn't get lupus like. And I got the full lupus. Like, I know at least like 8 people that have told me that within the last year.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't want to say like the doctors are falling back on it, but if they're doing the ANA and it comes back, so be it. But I really don't want to believe that the doctors are gathering a group of symptoms and, muscle fatigue, tension in the bones, and telling people out there you have lupus-like symptoms and not moving any further than that. But I do think a lot of it has to do with the celebrity influence on it, with Selena Gomez. For me, I remember watching Next Top Model, and it was one of the girls on Next Top Model that had it. And I was like, oh my God. And I
her
was
hair
like,
was
maybe
coming out. She
yeah,
had started losing her hair. I think she was on the season with Eva, but she was
yeah,
losing her hair,
yeah.
and she revealed that that's what she had. She wouldn't say nothing.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
she was Hispanic, I believe. And I just remember I was probably like a year or 2 years in. I was like, oh my God, okay. And so, and at that time, they told everybody it was a minority woman were, were the main population.
right.
So I was like, okay. So you got Black women and Hispanic women. We are mostly diagnosed. So that was that for me. But now today, Selena Gomez, are you kidding me?
But now that they are starting to get it is why I'm saying that I feel like the push behind why you hear about it so much now is because it ain't just affecting us.
Right.
And it's affecting them. And now it needs to be talked about. Then you get celebrities that are getting it. Like when Toni Braxton says she had it, and Nick Cannon, and like all these people, like even though they look like us, they really wasn't trying to talk about it either.
No.
They talk about it now.
Yeah.
But even them, the mental, like when I
personally, Nick Cannon definitely has a mental response to it. He definitely has a mental response to it, which is not healthy, which is not actually beneficial for this community at all either. But if they can help, they can help. Toni Braxton has done a lot for Lupus LA, I know. And so she helps that way. But I think it's more, it's going to be more diagnoses. It's going to be more people and getting the word out about it and also thriving with it. Because for me, it was, although I didn't pay much attention to it, it sounded like a death sentence to me. But I didn't pay attention to it because I was, so in my world. But, after that first flare, I was like, I hope these don't happen a lot. Like how often am I supposed to expect this?
Yeah.
And so that's what I was like, this sounds pretty bad. But still at the same instance, it's just my upbringing. My upbringing trained me to do things a certain way, and like breaking that historical context of my life is what, I work out with my therapist on, almost on a monthly basis of things don't have to operate the way you saw them operate in your household. You can do something different that probably might
Absolutely.
be more beneficial to you than what you've always known. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I know I thought of it as a death sentence. I mean, I was 17.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I can imagine. Yeah.
I was 17, I had never heard of it, and I let Google MD tell me more than I needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
And it immediately took
Scared you.
a mental toll. Immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I should do nothing. I'll never forget that. I will never forget that. Sitting up in Emory, and that
Mm-hmm.
man walked in and was like, oh, have you ever heard of this? And I was like, no. And it was like, oh, that's what you got. Your
Yeah.
ANA is 640. We gonna do this, and I was like, wait, what? It was like, yeah, it's time. I was like, oh, wait. Time. My mama is in California. I was a college student at Clark Atlanta University. We got to do something different. I don't know
Yeah.
what we going to do, but we got to do something different. Like,
Yeah. No, I was lucky in the aspect like each of my doctors have been A1. My first doctor, my dad's doctor, he took to me too. He got on the ball immediately. He's like, I don't know what the test gonna say, but I'm gonna send you to a rheumatologist. And when I got to that rheumatologist, he was an older white Jewish doctor that did not have a computer system. He was old school. He had the files. He was pulling out paper. He was showing me. He was drawing figures for me. He was just explaining everything to me, and he said it so very calmly. He was like, I'm gonna give you this prednisone. He's, I'm gonna start you on the high doses, but because we call it early, don't worry, you gonna be on the low dose for the rest of your life. And he's not lying. I have been on 2.5 milligrams since 2012. So, and a lot of people say you can just get off because 2.5 is really not doing much of anything. I mean, you secrete 10 on a daily basis anyway. So your 2.5 is not doing much. But he told me, he was like, I'm gonna start your high dose and we're gonna taper you down. And you're gonna be on the low dose for the rest of your life. He said, but you're gonna feel much better. And he wasn't lying. So, and I stayed with him and I outlived him. He up and passed away like out of nowhere. And so I had to find a new rheumatologist, who I've been with since 2014, I guess. Super nice. She always greets me. She always checks on me. And it's just very nice. I've never had a problem with the doctor, but when I educate people about lupus, especially new people coming into it, I tell them to don't be afraid to change your doctor. Like your doctor is there to help you. And if they're not helping you or you feel like they're judging you or you're not getting all the time and the attention that you need and your questions are not being answered, and they have been like my ultimate is bad bedside manner because that's just totally uncalled for. And I've gotten rid of coordinators. I've gotten rid of my social worker. I've gotten rid of nurses in the hospital that were supposed to, be watching over me. I've gotten all of them out of there. Like, you're not gonna just be talking to me any type of way. It's not gonna happen. So I tell people all the time, if you're not comfortable, change it. And if you're in the
yeah,
hospital, you just ask, I don't want this nurse. I don't want this nurse at all. And if you keep me with this nurse, she gonna have a bad attitude and I'm gonna have an even worse one. So do what you gotta do. So that's what, doctors are essential in this fight, but you don't have to settle with somebody that you don't like. And then once you do find that doctor that is your doctor, meaning that, I could tell my doctors anything. I could tell them I'm going on a trip. I could tell them, I feel tired. Having that portal helps now. But back then, it wasn't no portal. You just had to either show up at the office or call them on the phone and just wait on
that
this phone line. But you just have to have a rapport with them and build it up. But Don't sit anywhere where you're not satisfied, because your health is in their hands. Like, if you don't get well or you are stagnant, that's a reflection on them. They're supposed to help you. And so having a good doctor, which I'm grateful, I've always had good docs. And I've been with my rheumatologist and my nephrologist now for over 15 years. So it's just helped me out immensely.
Yeah. I know we share the same nephrologist, and I love him.
Mm-hmm.
Love him to pieces.
Yeah.
But it is, again, essential to advocate for yourself the same way, no matter if it's about your health or anything in life. Advocating for yourself is essential.
Yeah.
So what would you, if you were to have to share, and you probably already did, but what is the one thing you wish more people understood about lupus?
One thing, that is not a death sentence. It's not a death sentence. You can live with it. You can thrive in it. You can be successful in it. You don't have to stop what you're doing. You may have to, alternate some things, but you don't have to stop. Another piece of advice is don't look in the future. What you have right now is what you have. Don't worry about what could happen. I tell people that all the time. When they talk to me and say, what if I go out of town and something happens? Well, what if you go out, you don't, and something happens? Like, you have to live in the moment. You have to, they say cherish the day, but it's more about staying in the now and focusing on the now, making sure your mental is correct, making sure your physical is intact, and your emotional well-being. And then you won't have to worry about the future. You don't have to worry about the future. So those are my two things. Like, stay in the now. It's not a death sentence. And I also tell a lot of people, we go through these changes in our body. And I think it helped me greatly to have something to focus on other than lupus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether it be school, whether it be exercise and working out, whether it be your family, whether it be your church, whatever it is, have something else in your life that you can focus on. Because if you focus solely on lupus and what it is and where you are in this journey, you would drive yourself insane. And I think that's a lot of times why I always was go, 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 go. And nobody ever told me that I couldn't because I had lupus. Like, my parents didn't say that. They didn't tell me, they told me to, calm down, but they didn't tell me not to do it. And, they always worry about me working out, but nothing has happened. So, I just think a lot of people think that once you have it, you have to sit down. And that's just not true. Focusing on something else, putting your mind on something else, helps you in the fight. It also helps with the brain fog. Mm-hmm. If you have your brain constantly moving on something else, thinking about something else, then the brain fog won't have an ability to settle in. So not dealing with it in a silo by yourself without something else to do.
Yeah, I would definitely say make sure you have a support system, but also know yourself, know your body. I think a lot of times we don't get to know ourselves, know the different changes that actually are occurring. Learn what you're experiencing and move accordingly. If you need to change your diet, change it. If you need to start exercising, do it. But know you. Know yourself inside and out, and get a support system that you trust.
Absolutely.
That you can rely on and share how you feel. I think that the most important thing for me was being able to say when I was actually having a low moment and be okay with sharing that with a particular person versus internalizing it and having it by myself. Low moments alone are dangerous.
Yeah.
They're very dangerous. And so if you don't get anything from me on this episode, I say find someone you can confide in, because when the low moments come, and they will come, they're not coming, especially in a flare. Those are, the worst times. I know for myself as a single mom, flaring and having kids is a whole nother beast.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a support system to help during those times, especially if the kids are not old enough to do things on their own, like it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to have someone that you can confide in and rely on, where you can just be your full authentic self, where you don't feel like you have to put the mask on, where you don't feel like you have to be okay when you're not okay. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Get therapy and live intentionally. Live intentionally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you said everything. Know your body.
Yeah.
Have support. I also would say you don't have to share if you don't want to. Social media makes it sexy to share. And everybody is not at the same standard. And I just I have this thing about sharing at your lowest. Like, I see a lot of survivors sharing in their hospital bed. And I just think that does a disservice to other people's mental health. While it's sharing to help you lift you up, it also can be damaging to somebody else's mental health. And so just, you don't have to share every moment. And, that may be my generation. I'm Generation X. So that may just be my generation where, you don't have to share every single thing. And like I said, sometimes I find myself, if I do see that, I feel kind of down. I feel empathy. I feel sympathy for them, because they're going through something, and I don't want it to impact my day, but it does stop you in your track. And either you give thanks to God and the grace that He's bestowed upon you, or you're weeping for that person that you're watching in that hospital bed, getting dialysis, losing their hair, getting brain scans, all of those things can play on your mental health, where your day could have been totally fine, but you opened up that app and you see this person that you want to follow because you want to uplift them with, moments and words of affirmation, but that can also be damaging to your mental health. And visually and verbally, all of those things play a part into how you deal with certain circumstances. And so, I would add, yes, find a support system that you can share your innermost thoughts with. But on the same token, you don't have to share if you don't want to. And be cognizant of, when you are sharing to the masses, that your present situation could be damaging to their long-term mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But know yourself.
Yep. Know yourself.
Love yourself.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Miss Charisma.
Thank you. It was a great conversation.
Absolutely. So, you guys, if you're dealing with a chronic illness and mental health, seek therapy, know yourself, and always remember, love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus. Happy Transformation Tuesday, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
That's a wrap on another episode of Loving Me Before I Love You. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to show your support by subscribing and leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Stay connected with Tammy. Make sure you're following her on Instagram and TikTok at Coach Tammy Nicole. If you like to work with Tammy or have any questions you'd like her to answer, please head over to www.IamTammyNicole.com. Until next time, always remember to love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus.